Welcome to the Photographers Podcast, where we interview photographers from across the country. Every month, we will bring you a new personality where we step into the captivating world where moments freeze, emotions speak, and stories unfold with the click of a shutter. In this episode, we are trackside with Durham's own motorsport photographer Tim Mcgill. Tim has been capturing everything at the Speedway, known as Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, from motorcycles to antique cars. He has been published many times in publications such as Inside Track and Inside Motorcycles.
Welcome to the Photographers Podcast, where we bring you master photographers from across the country to help you with your own photography. Today I have a special treat. We're here at Canadian Tire Motorsport with Durham's own Tim Mcgill. Tim has been published in many magazines across the country, and I'm really lucky to have you on the show. Thanks for coming, Tim.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, Randy.
Well, I want to get right into what got you involved into this. How did you get started in this type of photography?
Well, back when I was in high school, I was the guy who had the camera, and I would be doing all the events around the school. And one of my friends at school, her dad was a rally driver, and she came out. She was a marshal, one of the people who wear the white outfits and help in emergencies. And I came out to help out one day, and I just felt the cars. I felt the energy.
I can feel it right now myself. So you're going to see some cars whipping by us as we're talking, because we're right here on a live track day, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, CTMP, or Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, has events all year, but we're right at turn one where the cars come by, and you'll hear them soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. So there's got to be a lot of challenges in shooting this type of photography. I mean, you've been doing it a long time, and maybe it's old hat to you. But for us newbies, what are some of the major challenges for you?
Yeah, the main challenges are, I mean, from a photography point of view, is getting your shutter speed right, looking for backgrounds, getting the exposure correct. A lot of the cars are very shiny. Do I use a polarizer?
Right.
Do I not use a polarizer? So there's a lot of these kinds of things to consider. Like one of the first things when you get to the track, and this track is particularly good for spectators, and if you have a camera with a decent telephoto lens, you can get amazing shots, but you need to watch for the background. You have to get your shutter speeds right, and so on. And then one of the most important things is panning, and that takes a lot of practice. It's like your golf swing. Start with a good backstroke and then follow through. And when you're panning with, you'll see the cars. This is the Mazda series going out now, but when you're panning, you got to follow through.
Yeah, I can see that you might have to have many shots, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can hear us over that noise. So you shoot both motorcycles and cars.
Yes.
Do you have a preference on what you like?
Personally, I like the motorcycles, and the reason is because you can see the person on the bike. A lot of times in the cars, the driver is hidden, and they'll have a dark visor. Right. They're inside the dark cabin. Sometimes all you see is the steering wheel with the driver's hands.
Right.
A person on the motorcycle, a rider, you can see them, and the bike is frequently leaned over, and you really get that human-machine
the tension,
interaction.
Right? The tension.
Absolutely.
And I mean, like, that takes us to like the atmosphere. Like, I have to tell you, before I even see the cars, you hear the cars and the rumble, and all of a sudden, I'm getting a little bit goosebumps when I'm here.
Yeah.
So
and
how
you
do you
feel it too? Yeah.
How do you capture the atmosphere as well as the cars?
Well, that's in my personal way of doing it. I try to portray the energy that you just described here at the track. And I do a couple of things with the photographs, and it may not be to everybody's liking, but for me, I try to make my images more energetic by tilting the camera slightly.
Yes, I've
And
noticed that with all your photos. You create the tension by tilting it.
yeah. Not a lot,
No.
but just a little bit
Yeah.
of a tilt to it. But I also process it so that the colors really pop. A lot of the cars, like here's a green, very bright green, bright goldy yellow. So you make those colors pop and just make the image more energetic.
So, do you do the tilting in post-processing or when you're actually shooting?
No, I do. Excuse me. I do that. The camera on the monopod, or if I'm hand holding, has a ring, and you can tighten and tilt.
Right.
My camera is rarely horizontal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're shooting, the light changes, you want to shoot one thing or another. How do you adjust quickly on this kind of thing?
Well, that's the thing. You have to get to know your controls while you're looking through the viewfinder. And I'm using a camera now where the control for over and under exposure compensation is right on the thumb wheel at the back of the camera. So I use the back button focus, and then if I have to turn to get different lighting, more darker, brighter, whatever, if I'm on shutter priority, which I am most of the time, I can look at the background, I can look at the subject relative to the background and know what the camera's doing. So if I have a really, really bright background, or dark background in this case, right here, and the subject is front lit, I'm going to have to underexpose that.
Now,
so you have to think on the fly, and that's where it's
you
nice.
Set up your function keys too. What typically will you set your function keys up for?
I usually, the one that I have is there's one button on the front that will switch to a high shutter speed and a sort of a mid, maybe 1000 ISO. So if I'm sitting there and I'm panning, or I'm following anything, and all of a sudden there's a crash over here. Both eyes open, by the way, because if you're ever near the track, you want to keep an eye out for anything that could be coming your way. So I'll have a function button where I can just push and hold, and when I pan or I move over, if there's a crash, it will automatically switch to faster shutter speed to capture that.
So you talked about setting your ISO. Is it a detriment to have auto ISO in this type of environment?
No, not really. I usually set an ISO and just leave it. Depending on the lens, am I using a teleconverter, polarizer, whatever, it'll usually be around 800, 640 to 800 ISO is what I set. The problem with having auto ISO is when you're doing post-processing, if your ISO drops to 400 and then all of a sudden you've got something a little darker and it pops up to 1600, 3200, those are different processing requirements.
So it just takes you much longer to get to the end product then, is what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I'm lazy when it comes to processing. I have all sorts of presets, and so I'll take a whole series of images that I shoot at one corner, and I can see in Lightroom all these shots are taken at turn 4, and so I can select here, and sync.
Yeah, okay.
And all of those things are taken under similar conditions.
Sure.
So the processing will be
And
similar.
you might shoot how many photos at one session?
Big race weekend, I'll come home with 3,000 or 4,000 images.
Being able to auto process is very important.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So everybody, Tim is actually going to show us how to shoot live. We're going to go to, which corner should we shoot from?
We'll go to turn 3.
We're going to go
to turn 3 in the morning is always good.
And we're going to show you how that works. Tim's going to talk to us about how to set up for this shot at this turn here. This looks to be a really perfect lighting for us, Tim. And what do you like about this spot?
In the morning, it's really good with the sun kind of to our backs. But when the drivers or riders come around the turn here, you can get them over the rumble strip. They're kind of making that tight turn. So if it's an open wheel car like these ones are, You can see the helmet. You can get the hand on the steering wheel, perhaps. But it's a good angle too, because sometimes you'll get 2 cars or 3 cars in a group, so you can show that competitive kind of spirit.
So are you going to be panning here, or are you going to be static? What do you
Well,
think?
you could do here. This one is going to be more static. So when they come over this turn, I want to try to pick them up as they're coming kind of just past the wall, and then I'll shoot them when they're just at the apex here where the rumble strip is.
Well, there's a car coming now.
Car
Let's see
coming
what that
now,
looks
right.
here. You're going to
So
shoot
you'll
it?
see, yeah, right there. He was a bit wide.
Yeah.
He was a bit wide. Well, so was he. See, that's where you always have to be prepared too, because sometimes the drivers or the riders will come offline, so you have to watch. But in this area, you can definitely. This is more static, but you can definitely get 2 or 3 cars together. Here is where you can do the panning. I put my hand on the top of the lens. I've got the camera grip here on a monopod, and I get set up, and I'm not going to tip the camera for these shots, but I normally give it a little bit of a tilt. So I'm kind of pre-focusing, and I will pick up the car right there, and back button focus, press and hold as I track the vehicle and shoot right at the apex of the turn. I will also move my focus spots around. So you want to leave, as the car's coming through the frame, you want to leave a little bit of space in front. So I will follow the car. We'll have to wait for another one to come, but I will pick up the car as soon as I can, make sure it's focused, follow the car, and compose the shot. So in this particular case, I move the focus area up to the upper right, because that's where I want the car showing with the lead into the track. So just to summarize, so what we were doing here was more of a static type shot, and we were looking at a particular area, in this case a turn, and we were waiting for the car to come through. Now, we talked earlier about using the back button focus and doing this kind of trap shot, and that's exactly what this was. Make sure when you compose the shot that you're leaving room in front for the vehicle to drive into. Set a shutter speed that's, medium. You want to get a little bit of blur in the tires. You are looking more head on, so that's not terribly important, but you do want to be able to have a shutter speed that's enough to stop the action. You're not going to get any blur.
So what's next, Tim?
Yep, what is next is you can hear some more cars coming out. We're going to do panning now.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So when the cars come around now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving the camera, panning with the vehicle. So basically what you want to do is make sure you're pointing where you want to get the shot, but you want to be able to pick up the car early, make sure you're focused on it, and then basically pan, follow the vehicle, make sure you're getting a nice full frame image, and then shoot. Just do 2 or 3 or 4. So as he's coming around the corner, there we go.
So it looks like one of the things you have to think about is this looks like there's not too many cars on the road.
Yeah, they tend to come in. They tend to come in groups, so you do have to kind of wait. But while you're waiting, you can think about what you want to shoot next.
Well, that's a good point.
What works, what doesn't. So.
Okay, Tim, what did we learn there with that panning, that exercise?
It takes practice. I always joke with people, if you look at your keyboard and you know how you have keys that you use most frequently, they get a little worn out. On my keyboard, it's the delete key. So, yeah, as you noticed, I think you were taking some shots. I haven't looked at mine yet, but you were noticing that if you do a series of pans, there can be 1 or 2 shots that are good and the rest are a bit blurred. And as you move through the pan, there's slight differences with respect to the camera and the car. So you don't get every shot clear. Now, the better you are at it, the more you get. But if you can get 1 or 2 out of a series of 5 or 6 shots, you're doing well.
So what was your speed that you were using for that, and your f-stop and all that stuff?
Yeah, I use shutter priority. And I was shooting at about 1/125th, 1/160th of a second here. Now, we are like really bright front lit morning light right here. So I had to underexpose by a fair bit. There's a big bright wall here, and most of the cars, as I said, with it being nice and shiny, I use, as most people do, the blinkies on the camera, and I was getting a lot of the blinkies here. So I've underexposed a fair bit. I took a quick look, and the images seem to be good. Okay, so Randy, let's see how you do here.
All right, I just want to tell everybody, this is the first use of my new Nikon Z6 III. I haven't used it yet. You're going to be the first to see how we do. I'm shooting at 1/25th f14, just to bring the light down a bit. My main shot is going to be that little Austin Mini. So let's see what happens here. I'm shooting at a bracketed, like, multi-shots, but I'm on low speed, about 7 frames per second. And I'm kind of hoping that there'll be a time where 2 cars come up to each other nice and close. My wish has been granted. If I want to get more of a level shot, I'm bending my knees.
Yep.
And if I don't want their heads above the fence, I'm trying to stand up taller.
Yep.
And of course, I'm talking and I miss my favorite car.
Now, I'm going to zoom in a bit here, but if you look in the distance, you see one thing I would look for here. You can see a bit of that white wall.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you can have that show under the car, and that's fine. But if you want to get rid of it, if you go down on your knee,
Yeah, I see it right now.
you can, yep. Yeah, the white wall there will actually show through the bottom of the car.
I love this.
Yeah.
So what I'm finding is on this shot, specifically getting low, it's better for the corner, because the minute they come here, the car's above the fence, and that's distracting. So what I've learned is coming through the corner low, up here high. We'll take a couple more. What I can say is when I've chimped, I see great results, Tim.
Good.
Results I've never seen on my other camera.
Good to hear.
Okay, so here I am handhelding, doing a selfie video. Why do I have to do a selfie?
I was going to say we're in selfie mode here because we're in the credentialed area, and so there's no tripods to hold the camera. So we get to stand and
Yeah.
shoot the movie in selfie mode.
So I want to tell you what I learned from this. Tim gave me a great tip to get lower, to get rid of that road, that little strip of road. So now it looks like the cars are almost elevated, like they're almost coming off the ground.
Yeah.
I found with the new camera, like, it was amazing. I've got so many shots that I never thought I would get, and it was almost easy. I don't want to say that, but it just worked. I didn't have to worry about it.
The image stabilization in the new cameras, and the settings being so easy to access and so on, and the viewfinder with the fast refresh rate.
It's amazing.
It's great. Yeah. So,
all right, guys, up next, we're going to talk about Tim's favorite 5 shots. Stay tuned. All right, so we're at the photographer's favorite portion of the show. And I've got a shot up there of I think a motorcyclist who has
Yep.
fallen off his bike, and
Yep.
it looks like he's running for dear life. So why don't you talk about that one?
That was a cool shot. That was a fellow by the name of Ben Young who races in the Canadian Superbike Series, and it's like they call it the bus stop at the track down in southwestern Ontario, whose name is escaping me at the moment. And he came around the turn, and in the middle of the turn, the back of the bike washed out, flipped him up, and I happened to be tracking him because he was leading the race, or second in the race at the time. And as he came around, the bike went out like that, and he popped off the bike, and he looked like he was out for his morning run.
Yeah.
And it was just cool how you had, the bike was falling, the other riders were kind of right there, and there's Ben up in the air looking like he's going for a walk. It was
let's clarify. Cool. Was he okay after that?
And Ben was fine after that. Yeah, he went down, and these motorcycle riders are crazy.
I'm going to pull up the next shot, which is of two cars that look like they were shot at night. But right. I got to tell you what I love about this shot is that they're sharp as sharp can be, yet the ground is moving, so there's still a sense of motion.
Yep.
I loved it.
Well, this shot was interesting. As you said, it was the middle of the day. Behind it were very dark woods. And so what I did was, there's a bunch of us at the media center, we were talking about trying different things. And one of the guys was talking about, shooting into dark, and we were talking about the exposure compensation that you would do. And I thought when I got back out there, what I'm going to try here is to really drop it. That was maybe two and a third stops underexposed. Now the cars came up over a hill, and they pop into this area of bright sunshine, and immediately behind them was full shade pine forest.
Okay.
So it was a great opportunity to do it. Now, that particular series, it was a long race, so they had laid down a lot of rubber on the track. And with the headlights, I used a little bit of Photoshop to help the headlights, but the track was very shiny. And when you use a polarizer, you can make that even darker.
Right.
Yep.
So, Tim, the next picture I want to talk about is this creative shot that's a mix of panning and sharpness. And I know it's probably one of the hardest things to do.
It is, actually. And I mentioned previously about how my delete button is very worn out, and that's probably one of the reasons why. This particular shot, wherever it is, I was panning with a very low shutter speed. I think that was about 1/15th or 1/30th of a second. And I was zooming at the same time.
Oh my gosh, I would never have thought of that.
That's what gives that kind of going into warp speed kind of look.
How did you even think to do that?
That was actually something I did years ago with film when I had an old pump.
The pump ones, yeah.
And they were much easier
yeah.
just to go like that. Yeah. On the new ones with the rotating zoom ring, you really have to kind of, as you're panning, zoom very quickly
not
change your speed and so on. And that part of it is what makes it very challenging.
Congratulations on that shot. That was honestly, it's one of a kind.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I took a whole series, and I think I got one.
That's okay. So, you just need one.
As long as you get one.
So the next shot I want to show our audience is what I call your motorcycle portrait shot.
Right.
It's the driver, it's the bike, no clutter, the background's dark, and the road. I find it it's quintessential of motorcycle photography.
Well, thank you. I took that shot under kind of very similar kind of situation as the previous shot, with the car with the headlights and the dark background, and it's done very much in the same way. Alex came up over that hill, same track, different race, obviously, it's a motorcycle race. And when he popped up, it was into this bright pool of sunshine.
Right.
So you really had to expose for that. And again, the background just fell away, and you got this very nice separation of the
Beautiful.
rider from the background.
Beautiful.
So when you see the shot, your eye goes right to the right to the
Yeah,
bike.
it's hard for me to tell you which one was my favorite of the one we've talked about, but there's one more I want to talk about, and it's of a pan of a motorcycle,
Right.
but the reflection in the ground was what drew me right to it. So is that rain? Did you add that post-processing? What did
No,
you do?
that was rain. And funny, I had my camera and I had the rain gear and everything, and it started to rain. I had to go to the car. I got my gear. I came back to the track. They were still racing, and then it started to pour, and the track was wet. Everybody was going slow, and I thought, oh, this isn't
Right.
worth it. And I was getting all ready to pack up, and a rider went by, and I saw in this light this perfect reflection in the water on the track, and I went, nope, I'm not leaving. This is perfect. And I got maybe half a dozen shots of different riders, but it was just the way the track was curved,
Yes.
the light, the rider going through it. So again, it was a pan. I think it would be maybe a 60th of a second, a 30th of a second, something like that. But a nice pan, and you got the reflection in the...
So if somebody wanted to get into this kind of photography, how do they do it?
Basically try to get as many
Like a
different
portfolio?
kinds, yeah, exactly. Try to get as many shots as possible, build your portfolio, and then approach one of the teams, one of the riders, one of the local media outlets, if it's an online media outlet or printed, and show them your work. Talk to some of the people in the pits. Get to know the local teams that come through.
Yeah.
Once you get your credentials to get to certain tracks, other places you go, they'll ask, what have you done? Who do you shoot for? Now you have it.
So, Tim, we're coming to the end of our show. One thing I want to tell people too is, like I say in every show, make sure you enjoy your time in the location, because you never know if you're going to get something good.
Yep.
So make sure you enjoy it. And I had such a great time just listening and seeing how fast these guys are going. And
yeah,
I'm going to enjoy this event no matter what my photos look like. So I want you to be able to follow Tim. Tim, where can people see you?
You can search me out as Tim Mcgill or as Tim Mcgill Photography. I also have some of my older work as TM Studios.
TM Studios.
Yep. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So.
And you know what? I want to thank the track for us here, right?
Absolutely. Canadian Tire Motorsport Park is an amazing place. The people here really run a great show. And I want to thank Sam Fellows for helping us to get in today and allowing us to shoot here to the track and the race.
So thanks again, Tim. Everybody, thanks for watching. Can't wait to see you in our next episode.